Hello there, and welcome to our 7th Business Book Club on LinkedIn Live. Please do let us know where you're joining from if you're watching live or if you're watching later on the replay. And as always, please do feel free to comment or ask questions during our session. So today I'm joined by Rebecca and Gill. Alyson couldn't make it today, unfortunately. So hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
So we're going to be discussing The Power of Regret by Daniel Pink. So I've listened to it on Audible, as usual. I found it really, really interesting. So Gill, do you want to just do a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, Gill Amos, executive coach, facilitator, and also assessor, and also part of this book club, which I really enjoy doing.
Excellent. And Rebecca?
Yep, so my name's Rebecca Wilson. I help businesses with their efficiency and productivity and data. I'm a fellow business book lover and really excited to talk about this book today.
Excellent. Yeah, I've really loved the business books, and actually I think that is, having now read this book about regrets, it is one of my regrets that I've not listened to or read business books much in the past, but this group has made me really push myself on some of the books that I would have read, so I'm really glad that I've done that. So just to start, should we just have some kind of general views on the book? So Rebecca, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I think we were saying before this started, it's incredibly well written. Daniel Pink always seems to have a very well researched but written in a very readable way. So it's a nice, easy to digest book. And the subject matter is incredibly interesting, right? He's really kind of made it digestible and kind of made it logical for you to understand, as opposed to this big topic of regret. So it's worth a read just for the pleasure how nice it is to read the book.
Yeah.
So
Agree. Did you listen or read this time, Rebecca?
both. So
Both.
when I first read the book, I listened this time to remind myself of everything for this. I reread the actual hard copy.
Excellent.
I like to get the hard copy when I enjoy a book for my collection.
Excellent. Yeah, it's very good. And Gill?
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because the title is sort of The Power of Regret. You look at it and think, it's interesting. And he does go into that. And I think what he does bring out is to live a life without regret is to live a life without learning. And I think that's really powerful. But I'm just so grateful to him for writing a book that's written in a way where the language is straightforward. It's put into really good chunks for learning, even the size of the font and the subheadings. So he hasn't overcrammed the book. This is what's really, really helpful, because then you can read it and retain it. And you can just read a chapter at a time and just reflect on it. So really helpful, very enjoyable read, and packed full of everything that's written is based on research. So it's a double whammy.
Yeah, it was good. And I think actually just the topic of the book was just got me thinking even before I started, because people always said to me, oh, yeah, what's the best piece of advice you've had? And I've always said, this situation I was in about 20 years ago, and a counsellor I spoke to said, don't waste your time regretting a decision you've made. So I've always kind of thought that's really good advice. But now it's sort of making me rethink that. And actually, there is a place for regret. But I do still understand what she was saying at the time. But yeah, I think it just makes you question everything a bit more.
I think it's really interesting, though, what you said, because I think perhaps that was just terminology, because what he does say in the book is really don't wallow in it. So do reflect on it. And I think it's like other things that are bad. You can have a wallow, but just for a day, and then you have to move on.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think what she said to me was trust that the decision you made at the time was right with the information you had then, which I think that's good advice as well. Okay, I like there was quite a big chunk of discussion at the beginning about research and how there was initially lots of research done in the US, and almost everyone came out of education regrets, and that was kind of almost over everything else. But then they looked at the demographics and the sample sizes they'd used, and actually it seemed a little bit questionable. So Pink had then launched this World Regret survey, which is really interesting, that you can just go online and add your regret to it, and it compiles everything. And he's got kind of 8 categories there, but it was much more widespread. So I thought that was quite interesting. Have you had a look at that or anything, you guys review too?
Not yet, but I do intend to.
Yeah.
Yes. It's on the list, right?
Yeah.
No, not yet looked at it, but I mean, I think he does a pretty wonderful job in in the book of pulling out the key findings. You don't need to go.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so in the second part of the book, he talks about four core regrets. So foundation regrets, boldness regrets, moral regrets, connection regrets. And then I've got a bit of a summary from the Psychology Today website of some of those. So the first one was about foundation regrets. So talking about failures to be responsible, conscientious, prudent, leave you thinking, if only I'd done the work. Lots of finance and health related regrets in there. So Gill, do you want to just expand a bit more on that section on foundation regrets and what you liked about it?
I think what it was, it's failures of foresight, really, to look ahead and see the implications. So if you look at the health, the finances and the education one, has a lot of examples of where people took those decisions in the moment. And there were people around them saying, you must, you should, you ought. But I think if people were at a certain stage of their development, say when they're younger, they're teenage, we know that our brains aren't fully developed till about 24, 25. It perhaps doesn't done in or said in the best way to get a great reaction. And so people didn't stay on and do the education, or they didn't save because they weren't looking ahead. They were thinking about the here and now. But also he looks about how some of those people have learned from that. And there's a lovely one about finances where somebody who's, I think, 43, realised he hasn't done enough to save, is now running courses for young people in sort of how to save money, if you like, money management. So it also talks about people and their regrets, but then these lovely add-on stories, the so what. So I'm just regret. I'm just going to put that behind, well, I'm getting, done. But I regret that, and this is what I've done. And I found that really, really helpful. So rather than I regret doing this, although sometimes with the education, will depend which country you live in. In the UK, it's never too late. There are always college courses you can do and vocational courses. But I am aware that in other countries, if you don't get it first time round, that's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Rebecca, have you got any views to add?
Yes, I thought this of the four was the one that was, most heavily influenced by other people, in the sense of he talks about how humans have this ability to sort of mentally time travel. So you have this ability to kind of say, if I do this now, this is where I'll be in the future. And of course, a lot of the foundation regrets are about things like education, and you have less of that ability because you've had less experiences to be able to time travel to that time in the future. So you are much more sort of listening to, what mummy and daddy said, or, auntie so-and-so says about what you should do, etc. And so it's felt what for me was quite interesting is it feels like a lot of people with these regrets will have been the environment in which they grew up in. It's much more of an influence than some of the other regrets, which are much more like I decide and I can see the consequences of my decision and making those decisions. So that for me was it almost actually made me reflect on how lucky I was that, my parents were really supportive about what I wanted to do education wise, and I had access to that and and a lot of people don't. So I think that's it's quite interesting that it's not all just you creating regrets, it's the kind of environment, society, culture that you live in that can create it too.
That's so true. I was thinking quite a lot about my education here, and I really regret not taking English, but actually it was because it wasn't possible with the timetable. It was one of those things that with A-level, you couldn't do this, this and this. You had to do this, this and this. So consequently, I ended up doing economics, which I was useless at. But I am now doing English literature A-level now. So like you say, it's not too late. You may as well do it. But the other thing I thought was then, does it make you kind of, when you're regretting your education decisions, I was thinking, does that mean I've tried to influence my kids subconsciously? I don't know, maybe. What do you think, Gill?
I think perhaps do it differently, because I did get some you shoulds, you oughts, and actually perhaps canvassing wider opinion and wider, well-informed opinion, I hasten to add, not just anybody's opinion, but also it's helping the people when they're making decisions to project into the future. But I think when I've done career coaching with younger people, and you can tell that there's frustrated parents in the background because they can see the future. And one of the activities I've done is how would you like your life to be in 5 years and 10 years? And sometimes I go further. It often terrifies them slightly. However, what it does, it really helps inform their decisions for today.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. My youngest son is at music college now, and I know school really wanted him to stay on and do A levels, and we left it totally to him to decide. And he has gone down the music route and absolutely loves it. And I think it was definitely the right decision for him, although it's not traditional A levels, etc. But he's loving it, and he sees himself producing music, so that makes absolute sense for him to do that. Rebecca, any more views on that kind of education and?
Yeah, I think that point that you made in terms of do I influence my children, yes or no? I think there is this kind of, maybe that's another positive of regret, right? So if you regret not going to college or something else, foundation, and perhaps you'll encourage your children to go down that route or to have the options or what have you. So maybe that is another kind of funny positive of regret, that it allows you to then teach your children in a different way and open their eyes in a different way, which was quite an interesting kind of funny concept. And that's right. As a parent, I'm not a parent, but as a parent, I believe you are trying to, how can I make my child's life better than what my life was?
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so on the Psychology Today website, they had this kind of a lesson on foundation regret. So they say, think ahead, do the work, start now. And I think that's quite a useful lesson. Okay, so moving on to the next one, this is boldness regrets. So things like missed opportunities to start a business, chasing a true love, something less grand like learning a new language, how to play an instrument, and leaves you thinking with if only I had. So Rebecca, do you want to expand a bit on that section?
Yes, I think this can essentially be summed up in the you'll regret what you don't do far more than what you do. Right, that's essentially what a boldness regret is I didn't take the opportunity to put myself out there, say what I wanted to say, do the thing I wanted to do. And what it talks about is this kind of battle you then have with yourself, creating all of these imagined futures that could have been if you had have asked that boy out or started that business or stood up against the bully or whatever it was. And this kind of human need to constantly grow and evolve, and kind of, have I hampered my growth or evolution as a result of not doing something? And I think it is, very much do the thing, right? Take the chance. It is a lesson from this one, and I think they sort of talked about how people very rarely said I regret getting out there and doing the thing, I only regret not doing it. So I think this is one that we can probably all relate to in some way or another, like, why didn't I, what would have happened if I, and again it's this ability to mentally travel, what would have been if I would have done, and get yourself into a right mental mess with it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that sliding doors film, isn't it? What could have happened if you'd just done that?
That's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Gill, anything to add?
No, I think so. I think there were some interesting ones in this one, though. The one that really sort of reminded me a bit, sort of like Dr. Zhivago, was the guy who'd been in Belgium when he was a young guy and met a girl on the train. Or was she Belgian? And she said, "Oh no, you can't come back with me. My father would kill me," or something like that. And he always wondered, should he have gone back and found her, and should he have got off the train with her, and things like this. And then eventually one day he had a letter from her with no address on. And he's never told his wife about it, but he's always wondered how might it have been. But of course, they were so young then. So what struck me was, in a way, he was beating himself up quite a lot about it and causing himself quite a lot of heartache. When I thought, yes, he perhaps regrets not being very bold, except for the fact she never sent a forwarding address. So it was really interesting. We can wallow in that regret a bit, I felt. When the reality, there are a lot of pointers there that weren't helpful if he had gone ahead and got off the train.
Yeah, very interesting. So the website comes up with the lesson: ask them out, take the trip, start the business, speak up on behalf of yourself or someone else. And then it just says that the inaction regrets that were recorded in the survey outnumbered the action regrets by 2 to 1. So
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, so the next one was moral regrets. So those times when you had a choice and you took the low road, the smallest of the 4 categories, which is only 10% of the total regrets that the team collected. Whilst they were smallest, they were greatest in variety and individually most painful, left you wondering if only I'd done the right thing. So Gill, a bit more on the moral regrets.
Yeah, I found this one really interesting. I think perhaps what captured me when he said, when I read through, he was saying he read through the morality on regrets, the 5 regretted sins. It looked like production notes for the 10 Commandments. And I thought it's so interesting. And it doesn't have to be the 10 Commandments, because when you get into the core of any religion, the core rules are very, very similar, you know, the basic rules there. But I found what was interesting about this, I think everybody has moral regrets of things they should have spoken up, which could be a combination of boldness and moral, of course. And if only I had done the right thing. But the other thing was really interesting was this discussion about what morality really is. And he got the work from Jonathan Haidt, who's a professor in, I think might be in New York, and the 5 pillars about morality and what's moral to one person, whether you have a narrow view of morality, like don't kill somebody, or a very broad view of morality, don't kill somebody, don't do this and don't do this. But the 5 pillars about morality, which are about care versus harm, so you should care for people, fairness versus cheating, loyalty versus disloyalty, authority versus subversion, and purity versus desecration. And I thought this was really interesting, because I'd not really explored morality in such a way. So I really liked the introduction to it. And it made me think perhaps I should read more about this in a type way. And then he looked at the 5 regretted sins, and this is what they call the production manual for the 10 Commandments, which are deceit, infidelity, theft, betrayal, and sacrilege. And it has a variety of each type of if you like, moral regrets within the book, from particularly the infidelity, but also where people have been tricked. It's the smallest number, but the greatest in variety and the most painful for people. But he said he also felt it was more uplifting, because it shows somewhere deep in our DNA is a desire to be good, because we know when it's not moral. The lesson: when in doubt, do the right thing.
Yeah, that's the pretty much the lesson there. When in doubt, take the high road. So Rebecca, anything to add to what Gill's just been saying?
Yeah, I thought also, ditto, but also I thought what was really interesting about this particular type was the kind of connection to your values. So if you remember stealing a 10-penny sweet out of a shop when you were little, and then you really, really, really regret that, that tells you something about, you really value justice, you really value fairness, and and so I thought this one was a very interesting one to reflect on for your own self, to then say, okay, if I deeply regret that thing, that means it means something to me. That means it has some kind of deeper purpose for me. That therefore tells me what one of my values is. So it's that, again, that what's the positive of regret is it can tell you something about yourself and what you care about. And I thought that was quite interesting. And the fact that you might deeply regret stealing the 10-penny sweet, but somebody else might just not care. Not even remember it, sort of thing. And again, that kind of tells you what you value compared to what they value. Really interesting reflection on this chapter, I thought.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Joe, anything to come back with on that?
No, but I thought I would actually agree with that. He had some really good examples about what is moral for one person and how some people just extend it and add more and more to it, which I do think you do see in religions, really, where they've enhanced what they say the 10 Commandments are. And I guess in some cases, put more and more rules around it. Some useful, some less so, some quite restrictive. But it is about the moral stance that people take. That's why I thought it was opening up this whole new area of study, really, and of thought.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. It's made me think about some things now from my childhood that's just popped into my mind. So that's really interesting. All about kind of trust. And I think one time when I did something that was really against what my mum and dad wanted me to do, and I've always kind of regretted that. So I think actually that's a really good point about the value of family and trust and all of that kind of stuff. It wasn't anything really bad, by the way. I just sneaked to the fair. But it was bad because, you know, they didn't want me to go because I was a young child and dangerous and all of that. But I didn't see that. I thought, well, all my friends go, so I'm just going to go. But still, there you go. Okay, so connection regrets. So you neglect the people who matter to you and who help you establish your sense of wholeness. The largest category, humans have a massive amount of regret about fractured relationships. So they say here, they sound like if only I'd reached out. And then I thought this section was really interesting when they talk about open door, where you can still do something about it, or closed door regrets, so things that are impossible to change. So Rebecca, do you want to talk a bit more on that?
Yeah, and I thought this one was, I mean, they're all interesting, but I thought this one was interesting in terms of, again, the meaning to you as a human. So I think it says something like, you know, your actions give your life direction, but it's connections to people that give your life purpose. And this kind of idea that you actually lose a bit of purpose if you lose connection with someone, specifically if it's a kind of very close relationship. And they talk about kind of two ways of them breaking up. I think it's drift or rift from memory is what he calls it. So kind of you just drift apart and you just stop calling that person and nobody really knows why, that, you know, don't call them anymore, just haven't reached out to them for a while, or some kind of event fallout happens. And again, it's this kind of sense of you not only lose the connection to that humans, you lose the good times with that person, but it's the sense of losing a bit of meaning, a bit of wholeness from your life, because as you know, humans, we're kind of social beings, right? And connections are what makes us human, what makes us people, rather than just beings. And you know, and I agree with the point about the open or closed. So essentially what that is it's, can you still repair it? So it talks in the book about remembering someone who had died and the person hadn't reached out to the person before they had died. So obviously that's closed, right? You can't now rekindle that. But the lesson to take away is, well, where can I rekindle my relationships? Why can't I be the one to phone that person? You know, who's on your list? And I did, after the first time I read this, I went straight and I said, I've not emailed that person, or that person, let's just email them, see what happens. Some of them didn't work out, some of them now I'm speaking to regularly. I think it's another just do it thing, right? It's pick up the phone or send an email, text, whatever.
Yeah, excellent. Gill, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think everybody can relate to this one very, very easily. And I found it really interesting with some of them, especially being a coach and working with people, and people are going, oh, no, I can't reach out to them because they'll think this, they'll think that. There was a lot of attribution going on. Whereas actually, when putting themselves in the other person's shoes, well, they might actually be really grateful to be touched at that time and receive a note from the past. And also how one person, she did get over herself and reach out and said, but we've missed 30 years. And the other person said, yeah, but we've got another 30 years in front of us. So, which was really encouraging if people wasn't reading it or thinking about it, thinking, oh, well, I won't because they will. They'll think this, they'll think that. Or in reality, they've just got too wrapped up in doing the supermarket shopping and the gardening. And then, you know, they've come in and thought, oh, just too tired to do that. Oh, no, it's a bit long. I'll feel embarrassed. So the other one about connection is people were very focused about how they felt rather than how the other person might feel if they did reach out.
Yeah.
And let's face it, some people are better at this than others. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, and I think it's you're kind of imagining what you think the other person is going to be thinking as well, don't you? Like, oh, they're not going to be interested in hearing from me after all this time, when, well, they're possibly feeling the same way as you. You don't know until you try, do you?
Exactly. You know, and if they don't respond, it either might be something's going on in their life that's more of a reflection on them than it is on you.
Yeah, Rebecca, did you want to add something else there?
No, just agreeing. It's that whole and in my experience, every time I have reached out to somebody after a while, nearly 99% of the time they're like, "Oh, I've been meaning to reach out to you." So you know they're sitting there with the same item on their to-do list forever as well, right?
Yeah.
And like the worst thing that will happen is nothing, and then like you say, that reflects more on them than you. So go for it.
Yeah, and time really does fly, doesn't it? That's the thing. How is it that you left school that long ago when it feels like yesterday? Excellent. Okay, so the lesson that came out of this one was, if it's a closed door regret, then do better next time. So a bit like Rebecca was saying there. So you know, what could you do differently next time if you're in a similar situation? Or if it's an open door regret, then do something now. Otherwise, it'll become a closed door regret, I guess, at some point. Okay, so any other thoughts on the book from either of you? So Gill, anything else?
I just think it's a good read, and it's a sort of surprising topic to read about. It was very easy to read as well, and that's why I liked it. Very thought-provoking.
Yeah, good. Okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, for me it was taking something bad and turning it into something good. So this idea that actually thinking about what do I regret rather than kind of pushing that down and not thinking about it, actually it tells you so much about yourself. It can help you improve your performance. It can help you with your resilience. It can help you teach your children, as we've just been others, as we've just been discussing, and that kind of idea of, you know, starting on this book, I was kind of like regrets equals bad. And now it's kind of regrets equals fruitful, equals useful, equals what could be, and how I could do better, and how I could improve, and how I could help others improve. And it's just interesting, right? It talks about millions of other people's regrets, which is kind of fun to we all like, kind of, you know, peeking behind the curtain into other people's lives, right? So you get to hear other people's regrets too throughout the book.
That's really true. Yeah. Yeah, I like the story you had about the few people around the world that have got these tattoos with no regrets, and then years later have gone to a tattoo removal place to remove the no regrets tattoo, and kind of, yeah, it's quite ironic, I know. Very good. Okay, so key points to leave with. So Jill, have you got a kind of a key thing that you think is worth remembering for people?
Yeah, well, I think is to use regrets, use them positively, and learn from them.
Yeah. Okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'd agree. Use them positively, and remember they tell you something about who you are, and we're all on this journey of trying to figure out who we are. So use them.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. So kind of using them for positive. Don't be scared of having regrets, I guess, is the thing, really. Embrace them and learn from them. Okay, so about out of time. So next time we are going to be talking about business growth. So I've got a copy of this here. I think Rebecca probably has as well. So this is Lessons Learned from Divorce, Dating and Falling in Love Again by Niraj Kapoor. So Niraj is in one of the groups that I'm in, and Rebecca's in as well. So he asked if we could review his book. So that's what we're doing next time. So I think it'll be the first one I've actually read rather than listened to. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so any final thoughts, ladies? Comments? No.
Just looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So great. Okay, so it'll probably be in a month or so. So thank you to anyone who's been watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.